Welcome to Conversations in Music with me, Michael Feinstein. This is a deep dive into some of my ephemera collection. Ephemera means something that is not meant to last, something that is temporary, something that people normally would not keep, that gets thrown away. And when it survives, it sometimes becomes a part of history and tells a story, inadvertently gives us little clues and bits of information that we can only get from these pieces of ephemera that are taken for granted, you know, like a handbill or a playbill or a program or an envelope. And I have always been a person who keeps things because for whatever reason, I feel like they may have value to somebody. They may have some sort of significance in telling a story. For example, this envelope. This is from the Irving Berlin Music Corporation, 1650 Broadway. Now, there was evidently at one time some music in here that was sent to somebody, and I just like that logo. And if I'm ever putting together a collage or a photo montage of something on Irving Berlin, this is something that is an interesting graphic. Playbills, programs often reveal a lot of important information. And this is a playbill from a 1933-1934 British show called Mr. Whittington, with a score by Johnny Green and Vivian Ellis. It played, is it the Adelphi or the Adelphi Theatre? This is a theatre in London, and I've been able to find a number of Johnny Green's songs related to this score. And playbills are interesting because they change, sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly, because there are different ads for every issue. And if a performer leaves or enters the cast, the name is substituted. And so if one has saved playbills, they have unique information in them. And to have the run of a series of playbills from a single show will reveal the changes of cast and sometimes other changes, including musical numbers and such. This is dated September 24th, 1934, which is rather late, as I recall, in the run of Mr. Whittington. Marvelous score, and most of these songs are completely unknown here. For many years, I tried to find the published sheet music folio from Mr. Whittington, and I never was successful in finding it over a 30-year period until last year, when I finally found a copy of this album of vocal gems from Mr. Whittington. And what makes it all the more remarkable is that there was one song that was in this British musical that was later recycled by Johnny Green and used in an MGM screen musical called Everything I Have Is Yours. And this book has the revisions by the composer Johnny Green when he adapted it 16 years later for use in Everything I Have Is Yours. And so this is Johnny's handwriting in red with all of the changes he made in the music and rhythmically. And then he wrote under the title of the song in pencil, Everything I Have Is Yours, 1576, being the production number of the film. So that was quite a lot of fun to come across that. So this is an example of a unique document that shows the genesis of how the composer's thoughts about the song changed. As you see, he changed the harmonies here and in other places. So that's Mr. Whittington. I found a bunch of things that came from the estate of Johnny Green. This is the conductor part for one of a series of short subjects he conducted for MGM Studios, one of which won him an Academy Award. He was the head of the MGM music department for 10 years, from the early 50s into the early 60s. And this conductor part is likely all that remains from this Strauss fantasy, because, as I've mentioned previously, MGM threw away all of their full scores and playable parts that the musicians played, and the only things that they retained were these conductor parts. So if one wanted to, once again, play the Strauss Fantasy, they would have to listen to the soundtrack recording and use this conductor part and reconstruct it. But this is the part from which Johnny conducted the music in the film. That has all of his notations, and I do have a 16-inch transcription disc that has the recording of the soundtrack as well. So maybe someday I'll have the opportunity to restore the Strauss Fantasy. Amongst the other things that this collection yielded that I came across was a presentation volume of the songs of Johnny Green. Published songs, Johnny Green, Volume 1, 1928 to 1942. It is not unusual for songwriters to put together these bound volumes of their own compositions, and sometimes they have pieces of music in them that are quite rare, because sometimes something can be published in a promotional copy. In other words, it's distributed to record companies and singers in hopes that they'll record the song, and if the song doesn't get any attention, it never gets any place past the promotional stage. And this is an example. This is a song called "Hold On to Love" by Johnny Green and Paul Francis Webster, that was orchestrated by Johnny, recorded by Billy Eckstine for MGM Records, and the record was never released. And so because the record was never released, this sheet music never went past this promotional copy stage. If the recording had been released, they probably would have printed a color cover with a picture of Billy Eckstine, and it would say, "As recorded by Billy Eckstine." And then, amazingly, in another collection, I came across the orchestration by Johnny Green that Billy Eckstine recorded. So sometimes in the midst of collecting ephemera like this, pieces from various other collections will come together to tell a story. Johnny Green is most famous for having written the song "Body and Soul," and this book has different editions of "Body and Soul." This is the song as it was first published in England, and I just love this Medusa cover, which was designed by an artist named Maximilian Rasco, who is a listed painter, and it's quite attractive compared to the cover that was first issued in New York when it was interpolated into this 1930 review, Three's a Crowd. But one of the other unusual things about this first edition of Body and Soul is there are a few variances in the music, and at the end of the bridge there's a completely different bass line and chord progression that I discovered in comparing the two editions. So those are the sorts of things that one can discover by having multiple copies of a song from different incarnations. This is another big song of Johnny's, "Out of Nowhere," which was an early solo recording for Bing Crosby. And then this is another cover with Ruth Etting on it, who is immortalized in the movie "Love Me or Leave Me," played by Doris Day. I'll show you an example of a American publication of a song and a British publication. I'll show you another example of that to show you how they could vary greatly in art and sometimes in content. This song, "Hello My Lover Goodbye," this features Ethel Merman on the cover. That's quite an attractive cover. And these songs were all printed in the early 1930s during the Depression, so sales of sheet music were quite low, so some of these are very, very hard to find today. This song actually was originally in a review called "Here Goes the Bride," which only lasted a couple of weeks on Broadway, or maybe even less than that, I don't remember, but it was a short-lived show. And this is a drawing by the famous New Yorker cartoonist and caricaturist Peter Arno, who also presented the show and probably lost a bundle of money in the process. This is a collectible cover because of the cartoon art. Betty Boop, a Paramount star, featured in Fleischer cartoons. Sheet music with pictures of cartoon characters are often very collectible, especially Disney. Well, anyway, that's, I think that's enough of this. So that's Johnny Green, wonderful Johnny Green. This is a catalog of the songs of Arthur Freed, who most people know as a Hollywood film producer of the greatest MGM musicals. And this is a book that was sent out to publishers and singers to promote his song catalog, and they're individual pieces of sheet music, spiral bound together, all generic covers in hopes of getting people to sing his catalog. And then there are these little tiny artist copies, one of which I showed you earlier. This is a song that was deleted from the Ziegfeld Follies, sung by James Melton. We will meet again in Honolulu. I don't think it ever got a commercial recording, but clearly they were trying to promote it. Sing Before Breakfast, Judy Garland did that one. Your Words and My Music, that was from a movie called Lady Be Good, no relation to the Gershwin stage show, and etc. This was given to me by Rosemary Clooney. It's a catalog of the songs of Irving Berlin that were sent out again for promotion. And Rosemary had this copy. And she wrote, Michael dear, here's the old catalog I found. With love, Rosemary. And of course, Rosemary was in the film White Christmas and was a very close friend of Irving Berlin. So he probably sent this to Rosemary. And it's a chronological listing of all the songs by Irving Berlin, and then it has his songs listed by subject matter, in case somebody is putting together a show and is looking for a song about animals or apparel, or a heart song, or a farm song, or a song about happiness. Holiday songs, well, we know Berlin did well with holiday songs. Christmas. Christmas time seems years away. 1909, White Christmas, Easter, Easter Parade, Lincoln's birthday, New Year's, Thanksgiving, Count Your Blessings Instead of Sheep, Valentine's Day, Be Careful, It's My Heart. Mr. Berlin certainly had the market cornered when it came to holiday songs. And then in the back of the book, it has a piece of paper pasted in to update it to include the most recent songs that Berlin had written, that being 1962, for the score of a Broadway musical called Mr. President that starred Robert Ryan and Nanette Fabray. So this is a very resonant little piece to me. This is a souvenir program from the composer Sigmund Romberg when he went out on the road and started doing performances and appearances of his own music. And it's wonderful because it has all these fascinating pictures of Mr. Romberg. Sigmund Romberg was a next-door neighbor of Ira Gershwin's. Ira Gershwin lived at 1021 North Roxbury Drive. Sigmund Romberg lived at 1023. And he was very famous for having one of the most extraordinary music libraries in private hands. And you can see a picture of it here. This is a picture of Romberg in his music library. And you can see it is just wall-to-wall musical scores. Now, there is a story about Erich Wolfgang Korngold going to the home of Sigmund Romberg with a young music student, and they enter Romberg's library, and this young guy sees all of these scores that are lining all of the walls, overwhelming, and he turns to Korngold and he says, "Did he write all of that?" And Korngold's response was, "Not yet." Romberg was known for taking his own tunes and plagiarizing them, turning them sideways or turning them different ways in order to try and get another hit from something that was a previous hit. So that's Sigmund Romberg. Another piece of ephemera that's fun is a book of lyrics by Cole Porter from the movie Silk Stockings. That came from the collection of Sid Charisse. Sid Charisse was in the movie Silk Stockings, and at some point she was given a book it's signed by her, of course, dated April 1956. This is a film that starred Sid Charisse and Fred Astaire. And it lists the lyrics, it lists the date, because often they would rewrite the words, and when the words were rewritten, they would change the date and reflect that it was revised. This song was in the score, Paris Loves Lovers. That was sung by Mr. Astaire. Hotel Sequence, Satin and Silk, Finals, Act 1. And there are a couple of songs in here that were written for but not used in the film. And I can't put my hands on them right now. But again, it's wonderful to be able to see these original pieces. Some person very kindly sent me a whole cache of photographs of songwriters, and these are a very nice addition to have. This is Irving Berlin as he appeared in This Is the Army in 1942 when he sang "Oh, How I Hate to Get Up in the Morning." This is a Hollywood portrait of Irving Berlin taken in the 1930s, even though it doesn't say. This is Mr. Berlin. Lots of photos of Irving Berlin. Rodgers and Hart. A nice picture of George Gershwin, a rather famous one, taken in 1935. And I believe that that's a photo of him working on the score of Porgy and Bess. So this would be 1934 and 1935. This is a lyricist named Sammy Gallup, who is not well remembered today. He had a number of hits in his time, including the lyrics to Holiday for Strings. Richard Whiting, who wrote Hooray for Hollywood and Too Marvelous for Words. This photo is sepia. It's not black and white, it's sort of that brownish color. The same color that is in the first part of The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is not black and white in color, it is sepia in color. But we never knew it was sepia until they released it on home video, because when we saw it on television, it was black and white. Percy Faith, Sammy Kahn. You know who that is? Rocket Man, Elton John, Bernie Taupin. The great Diane Warren, who I believe has been nominated for an Academy Award 11 times. Lieber and Stoller, Jerry Goffin, the aforementioned Johnny Green with 2 of his Oscars. This is Johnny Green on the set of the film They Shoot Horses, Don't They? The recently departed Michel Legrand. Henry Mancini, composer of so many great standards, including, of course, Moon River. An autograph here, a photo of Alex North, one of our great film composers. This man is a Hollywood giant. You probably have no idea who it is. This photo was taken in the 1970s. His name is Ray Heindorf. He is responsible for the sound of the musicals at Warner Brothers for decades. An incredibly gifted man. John Barry wrote all the James Bond scores. This looks like Max Steiner. It is. Mark Wolfgang Korngold. Anyway, one more. Elmer Bernstein. Elmer Bernstein, whom I met on one occasion, told me that his family had Feinsteins in their lineage, and he believed that we were related. So, I spend all of my leisure hours going through and cataloging this material to get it in shape so it can be available to others for research. A lot of it will go to our Great American Songbook Foundation in Indiana to help continue this legacy of the Great American Songbook. There's a lot more to show next time, so thanks for tuning in.